Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, Season 1, Episode 5. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're still on the movie set. In fact, we're actually getting a documentary on the behind the scenes of the movie, which I even love. There's this whole bit where it's like, oh yeah, the movie, even though it's like day 2, we were already $17 million over budget, and there's only been like 3 shots of the can, which I was like, okay, I think that's again another meta joke, because if I'm not mistaken, maybe it happens a lot more with movies than you kind of think, but I want to say, didn't the actual Scott Pilgrim versus the World movie go over budget? Like, wasn't that also kind of a thing too? Like I said, it probably happens a lot more with movies. I just feel like you don't always hear about it, but I feel like I remember hearing that, so I feel like that had to be kind of like a little inside joke in that regard. But yeah. Ramona is on this, she's now playing Envy's stunt double as herself, and it's like, wait, your name is Ramona Flowers, and you're the stunt double for Ramona Flowers, as a stunt double for Ramona Flowers, and she's just like, and just so like gleefully nodding her head along. It's like, okay, we get, young Neil, riding and being kind of the idiot. I love that. It's like, oh yeah, I love this like dark tinge to this like dark coloration to this scene representing the darkness in Scott's soul. It's like, yeah, you're wearing glasses. He's, yeah, I got a prescription. It's like, no, you're wearing sunglasses. He's like, oh, okay. So Envy and Todd, they did the whole rock star thing. Now they want to be actors, and this is the first thing they've ever worked in. It almost feels like that's supposed to be a commentary of, yeah, just because you're big in one field doesn't necessarily 100% mean you can transfer over into another one. Because they're famous, they were able to just be like, oh yeah, let's get Envy and Todd in this situation. So, obviously, like I figured as much, Todd would be, Scott, because yeah, he even said last episode that he was going to be Scott, so that's interesting. And I love that they're filming the scene with Wallace, which, once again, Wallace just giving the most based response of like, yeah, Wallace Wells is pretty awesome, why don't I get paid to be me, So he's in the club, they're in the Rocket scene, and as in like the place called the Rocket, and he's supposed to just put his hand on like his hand like behind on like Envy's back, but then like they keep making out, like hardcore making out. I mean, then practically dry humping and all these different takes. And Wallace came up with a different idea for the director, who I should also note, the director looks like Danny Sexbane, Danny from the Grums. It's the Game Grumps. So it's so interesting. I kept thinking that the entire every time the director popped up, and he reminds me of Danny so much. It's crazy. But either way, well, Six Bangs is like his musician name for that's his like pseudonym for I know Danny's last name, but it's not important. I'm going on this whole tangent. Either way, so tangents and all that aside, the fact is that Wallace was like, oh yeah, let me give you some notes. I'm like, what are these notes going to be? And it's like, oh, you two stare into each other's eyes, and then Wallace has got the hearts in his eye, and they start hardcore making out. Envy's over there like, wait, what's going on? The entire crew's looking at it too, and I love it because I'm like, wow, dude. Because Wallace is not only is he getting paid, it's like, yo, I'm going to get me some sugar on the side too. I was wondering if they were having sex, but I guess the entire time they were just hardcore making up. But every time it's like, oh, trailer lines, and it's like, oh, let's do it. And they're just like the trailers are rocking, and if the trailers are rocking, don't come a knocking. But I was like, are they? So they're not having sex. They're just like hardcore making out, because later on Todd's like, oh, this is where me and Wallace made out for the first time. This is where me and Wallace made out for the second time. This is where we made out so it's like, I guess they never had sex. But it's like, oh, this happened. Because I was like, well, all those makeout sessions happened in the first day of filming, like, all of that. So I'm like, because, like, the only scenes we actually saw them filming was that tiny bit with them making, I mean, even Todd said himself, it's like, yeah, we got 3 shots in the can. That's about it. I mean, how much of the Lucas stuff from last episode got canned as well? Maybe it's supposed to be almost that inside joke thing of like, yeah, people are going to notice that, oh, it's Lucas and then it's Todd. And or I guess you had to go back to refilm that stuff. I don't know. But yeah, Todd isn't just into Wallace. He's in love with him, which I love that he's like, oh yeah, those rumors about me having some like hot, steamy, like on set romance with someone, affair. It's like, no, those are untrue. But yeah, it's like, it's to the point that Todd got like a tattoo. He's like madly in love with, I wasn't expecting the storyline to take that direction. And for both like Ramona and Envy to find out, they're like, wait. And even Ramona's like, wow. She was almost like, wait, Todd and Wallace? But then she was almost like interesting. But like Envy took it the hardest. I guess it's like, right, you're in a relationship with him. Especially the whole thing is like, oh, vegans aren't supposed to waver. He's like, no, I never said that. I said vegans never wafer. We never wafer. Yeah, never. Wafers aren't vegan. But then I love the cut back to vegans never waver, and zoom in. I'm like, that's good. That's good editing. So I love that. I even love Ramona, like, when the security guy, the behind the scenes, like, documentary people were like, oh, like, why are you doing this? And she's like, oh, yeah, I took this job just because the security, like, wouldn't let me go through because they found out I wasn't part of the movie. So I got this job so that I could talk to one of my exes about whether or not he ended up opening a portal and kidnapping the guy I went out with one time. And the guy was like, what? It is kind of messed up on Wallace's part. Like, that Ramona is trying to... Maybe you don't know specifically she's trying to talk to Todd, but she's on the mission to find your friend, which is so messed up that you don't care. Like, literally no one cares about this except Ramona. Julie makes sense. She's like, Scott sucks, who cares? And she's the only one in the story moving along with it. Everyone else is like, oh yeah, it sucks. What about Stacy? To be fair, Stacy just thinks her brother's dead. I guess she never overheard those conversations between Ramona and, because Kim knows, but Kim was never too like, yeah. Like, they're just like all just doing their own thing. Like, no one gives a shit that, oh, Scott's actually still alive. And it's like that Ramona's the only one on a mission to save him. It's like, yeah, all these people that have been in his life for a long time. But maybe that's also playing into, yeah, Scott's that much of an asshole that it's like, oh, we love him, but we also kind of like dislike him. And it's just, once again, it's just the nature of this world of like, yeah, it's sad what happened to Scott. Oh, well, we got to live our lives. So... But it's like, yeah, you went out with the guy one time and you're going above and beyond for him like that. That's kind of wild. Some would even go as far as saying kind of insane when you actually, think about it in totality like that. I also love that they gave, like, the stunt double thing. I love that they gave it to Wallace because it crossed my mind last episode because of all the ninjas. The paparazzi that Lucas had to deal with. I was like, I guess you could. It's a stretch. It's a reach to be like, oh, you could almost look at it as a parallel to stunt double things. But for them to give it to Wallace this episode is kind of interesting because in the movie, Lucas is the one with the stunt doubles and Scott has to fight over him. So like this time it's because obviously Ramona's fighting all the exes in this. I don't know if she like fights alongside because I know like. They fought alongside each other during the Roxy fight because like Scott didn't want to hit her, so like that was kind of Ramona kind of moving his body if I remember correctly. Because every other ex it was Scott fighting by himself if I remember correctly. So I guess giving it all the fights to Ramona this time. In some capacity because so far the only one she's fought is interestingly enough Roxy because she didn't have to fight Lucas. Lucas was fighting paparazzi. She doesn't have to fight Todd. Todd's fighting his depression because Wallace was like, yeah, I'm not into you. It's like, yeah, she's mad at me because I broke her boyfriend. It's like, I'm not in love with you. It's like, yeah, this was like an on-screen relation. This was a film set. It's like, the fact of the matter is the moment this movie ended, the relationship was going to end. And he's just so depressed. He goes back to his trailer just chowing down on poutine. I don't think I've ever had... because essentially it's just like, isn't it like chili cheese fries, but with like with like cheese curds and like specific gravy on it? I think that's all poutine is, but I don't think I've had that in general. I've had close enough with like chili cheese fries, but I've never had just, I guess what would be considered like traditional poutine. So that's just interesting. I'd assume that was supposed to be poutine. It's like that's one of the things you kind of hear about. Like that's like I don't know if I feel like it's a Canadian dish. I always associate it with Canada. I've always thought it was like a specifically like Canadian cuisine, but either way, tangents and all that aside. Envy's so pissed she wants to go after Wallace, and it's just like, yeah, he's bringing out his stunt doubles, and so Ramona has to fight him because she thinks this is part of the movie. And like the moment, because I was like, the moment she finds out this has nothing to do with anything that Todd's already gone, she's like, oh, then I have no reason to be here. But she's fighting all of Wallace's people, even Straight Wallace is there, and like, wait, Straight Wallace? Wait, you're a stunt guy now? He's like, well, you made a change career-wise. She's like, yeah, but I'm here for very specific reasons. And Wallace is over there being so toxic, just like talking shit like, oh, you guys are moving slow. You call that a backflip? And it is berating them, and they're like, hey, come on, man. We can take physical abuse, but we can't handle the verbal abuse. And they all break down, cry, and walk away. He's almost like, hey, come back. It's like, why would they come back? You're such a dick. But yeah, so Ramona and Envy go check on Todd, who's drowning in his sorrows. But it turns out, yes, he had nothing to do with Scott disappearing. He's like, oh, like, no one tells me what to do. Like, I'm the one that kind of decides what I do. So Envy, for one, why would she bother asking him to kidnap Scott? So, but it's like, and she's also going like, oh my God, look at these portals. Look at the craftsmanship. It's so much better than anything Todd can make. I also love that we gave Todd the P-bar. Because the first time that ever came up in the movie was Scott, so giving it to Todd was kind of neat. I love that he immediately came out of the bathroom and started eating again. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you didn't wash your goddamn hands. But it was, either way, Envy's kind of like, right, wanting to leave losers behind in her life. And he's like, oh, you talking about me or Scott? It's like, both of you. So that sucks. So she's like, oh, you're fired. And it's like, yeah, I quit. And lo and behold, as she's about to leave, Matthew shows up and he shuts down the entire production. So it's like, okay, so that's why the movie didn't make it, so. The director straight up got killed. The camera guy that was filming the documentary, I mean, saw him get attacked, but that's about it. But Matthew and Ramona end up talking, and it's like, wait, Scott's not, wait. I didn't win? No. He's not dead? No. Is he mad at me? It's like, dude, I don't know. Why that's why I'm looking for him right now. But for him, it's like, honestly, me beating Scott gave me the confidence to take on Gideon, which Ramona's like, wait, you did? Yeah, you beat him. It's like, wait, where is he? It's, yeah, I don't know. He's with some jewelry girl. Did you even know, like, Gideon's not even his real name? It's Gordon Goose. And she's like, what? I did not know that. It's so interesting, too, because, once again, getting into these relationship aspects about some of the exes, because, well, it's so interesting, because, like, Envy's like, oh, me and Todd have been together since we were 11, which I was like, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, oh, they were together, but it was like a long-distance relationship. He was in the States, she was in Canada, and so they were kind of together, but he's kind of a I live in the moment type of thing, so him and Ramona were together for a bit, and as a kind of, like, romantic gesture, he flew up to the moon and punched it, which Envy found it romantic, not as much, which for Ramona, which I'm wondering, is that why she broke up with him? And I wonder, is that what that's supposed to mean? It's interesting, too, because we know that she ended up dating Roxy. That must have been, like, pretty early on in college, then, if she went from Todd to, because he's number 3, so Roxy's number 4, so it's like, that must have been, like, I mean, didn't she say, like, their junior year? So I guess she didn't date anyone her senior year. Like, that must have been, like, early, like, right into college, because they were, like, college roommates. And I'm assuming, because that's, yeah, interesting timeline-wise, just to think about that. Because, like, some of those relationships were pretty, like, back-to-back-to-back. I mean, well, to be fair, there was a gap between Lucas and Matthew, because Matthew was, like, a week, and they were in middle school. I think her and Lucas dated when they were in high school, so it's like, that there's some time gap in between there as well, so. Gideon's obviously the most recent ex, so that was probably like a lot more recent. But either way, Ramona's now interested in going after Gideon because it's like, right, he might have had something to do with Scott's disappearance. This was all his machinations and all that. But also, like, him and Julie know each other, and she already knows Julie doesn't like Scott, so there might be something in that regard. I'm also curious to see what happens to young Neil, because it's like, yeah, you wrote this movie and it didn't happen, but now it's like, well, we know you didn't technically write the movie, someone else did. Once again, I initially thought future Neil, but now I'm thinking future Scott. Like I said, maybe, just maybe, there's a multiverse thing to it, but I'm thinking it's specific to time travel, not necessarily multiverse. But we'll see. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us. Obviously, the ending kind of suggests we'll obviously dive a little more into the Julian Gideon of it all. Like, I doubt they're the ones behind this, but there's definitely something there, and I'm curious to find out about that history, and just I don't know what to expect from this next episode. So I'm excited to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.